Villagers is a card drafting and tableau building game for 1 to 5 players that was fully funded on Kickstarter last June and made its way to backers and friendly local game shops over the last month or so. Hats off to you if you did back this one on Kickstarter, because we only just got our hands on it and frankly, it's pretty special.
It's the Middle Ages and there's been a big old plague. Bad news for anyone who doesn't have their own grain farm. Psst, you've got your own grain farm. Players will start with a single measly card and rapidly expand into a bustling little village full of mining operations, agriculture, vineyards, lumber industries, and much, much more. All of the little additions that you make to your town will go towards that important goal of getting lots of money, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most money wins. And that's capitalism, baby.
So how does Villagers cram that big experience of rapid expansion and morally questionable money making into a tidy little box that will only cost you somewhere in the region of £20 to £25, including additional rules for a completely separate solo mode in which you try and take down the descendant of a rubbish monarchy? Let's find out.
So here's how a game of Villagers plays out. The game's broken into 3 phases: drafting, building, and the market phase. The market phase happens twice per game and it's essentially just where you score points. So drafting and building happen every turn, so let's kick things off with them. In the draft phase, each player will get a chance to select a number of cards from the road, which is basically a big pile of tantalizing stuff in the middle of the board, organized into 6 face-up cards and 6 face-down piles. Everyone around the table will take turns picking one of these cards until they've all hit their draft limit. Any face-up cards get replaced by the top card of the leftmost face-down stack, and this acts like a little timer for the game. Once the first market card is revealed and there's nothing to the left of it, you'll do a market phase this turn. Reveal the second market card in the same way and you'll get your second market phase, and then the game ends. That means there's not a massive amount of time before the game ends, and every card you pick becomes vital to your success. Not to mention the fact that all of those other hungry vultures around the table are probably after the same thing. So what do you pick? Well, this Harvester seems like a good start. It makes food, which will allow you to draft more cards each turn. Nice. Or there's Carpenter, who lets you build additional cards each turn in the same way. Also solid. Oh, wait, no. This lad makes 20 gold. Nah, I'm definitely grabbing him. So I can just put him in my village now, right? Not quite. Let's talk about the building phase.
In the building phase, players will get to take all those lovely cards they've drafted and any they have from previous rounds and start actually putting them in their village. You can place as many as you like as long as you don't go over your build limit, which, as we said before, you can increase by getting more of these little building icons in your tableau. Neither of those limits ever goes above 5 though, so you'll always be slightly restricted in the amount you can do in any one turn. The 3 most basic cards you can build are the Miner, Lumberjack, and Heyer. These are always available to everyone and you don't have to draft them, they just have their own little supply outside of the road. They also won't count toward your build limit, so you can always build up to 3 of them a turn, regardless of the other cards you play. You do, however, have to discard one of the cards from your hand in exchange for each one you pick up, and that is just nasty. Every card in Villagers is pretty damn good, so choosing which one of your specialists to retain in a basic profession can be tough. Stop pumping that cheese barrel, Margaret! You're going down the mines! These 3 cards, and a few others that are hidden in the deck, will serve as a bedrock for your village, providing vital materials for those that wish to ply their trade.
From here, the world is your oyster, because pretty much all of the cards that you'll draw in Villagers are part of a production line. Let's say that you grab one of those lumberjacks, not very useful on their own, but because you've got all this wood knocking about, you can now start fashioning it into something that's useful, like some wheels. And bang, look at that. 4 gold that your village will be producing in the markets, but why stop there? Shove those wheels in a box and not only do they go round and round, but you've also got yourself a cart, a carriage, and way more money. 3 times as much, in fact. Some chains go even deeper. Your lowly miner, sorry Margaret, can be assisted by a seeker who will find the best spots in town to dig up. When you add spelunkers on top of that, suddenly you can get right into the nooks and crannies and find the real expensive stuff underground. Start refining those little sparkly ground nuggets though, and you've got your jewellery, and that stuff is for some reason very profitable.
But hold your horses there, cowboy. You can't just be building things willy-nilly. Oh, no, no, no. Let's start talking cold, hard facts. First of all, if you're going to commit to building a big old production line, you better hope you can find the right people. Aside from a few exceptions, there's only 2 copies of each card in the deck, so you might have a nice Spelunker Jeweler combo sitting there waiting to be played, but seeing as every player around the table can see what you draft, they might just be holding on to the Seeker you need to finish the chain out of spite. Not to mention the fact you're only drafting and building 2 cards per turn at the start of the game, so when are you going to devote some of your time to placing vital builders and food producers, increasing your build and draft limits respectively? It's tricky. On top of all that stuff, there's the very clever padlock mechanic. And oh boy, this bit is good. So when you're thumbing through the deck of cards in Villagers, you'll notice a portion of them have a little padlock sign in the top left corner, like the Cooper here. He's just trying to make himself some nice barrels, but he's not a metalworker. So to unlock this card, you'll need a blacksmith. Okay, no problem, there's blacksmiths out there in the world. Just pay 2 of your coins to the bank and you've got yourself a card. Nice and simple. Unless one of your neighbouring villages happens to have a blacksmith, in which case you'll have to pay them instead. Nasty. Well, don't worry too much, because if you can manage to build your own blacksmith, not only do you become a candidate for taking other players' money, but also, anytime you build a new card in your village that requires that blacksmith, you'll get 2 coins from the bank placed on your blacksmith instead. Ah. Sneaky. Suddenly, that blacksmith who says he's only making 2 coins for you in the scoring phase is actually making a whole lot more. There's a ton of directions you can take your bustling village in as you expand, and every game of Villagers you play will see you end up with a vastly different tableau to the last. You might be tempted to get as many different suits of cards as possible, giving you lots of options and making sure there's always a chance you'll find something useful when you draft. There's quite a few cards in the deck though that will reward you for having lots of the same symbol in your village, like this ore muller. You've also got the option of these solitary cards which don't require any production lines at all. You just get a nice instant bonus like more buildings and food, or a quick bit of cash flow. You might just find a few special cards littered throughout the deck that can help you out in sticky situations. A monk can fill in for any links in your production chain that you might be missing, or a tinner can help you unlock cards without having to fork out the cash.
Villagers is an incredibly bitey game that will absolutely shower you in difficult decisions. For such a small card game, there's a wealth of different problems that this game can throw at you and an equally sizable number of angles from which to tackle them. Even just grabbing one of those basic villagers can be an absolute nightmare. When you discard your card, it doesn't just go into some pile out of play and out of reach, it goes on top of one of the face down stacks where any other player can grab it. You might have some incredibly valuable card in your hand that you know you're never going to be able to build because the rest of the chain is nowhere to be seen, but if you chuck it away, then you're just feeding the coffers of your opponents, who were probably the ones holding on to all the cards that you needed anyway. You could put your bluffing face on and pretend you've chucked some junk, but every card has its suit printed on the back, and if you're playing with some eagle-eyed friends, they probably would have watched you draw the card in the first place. The game never feels like it's weighing you down though. I've played games with an equal number of things to think about, sometimes more, and they can just put you in some horrible positions as you jump between the 40 different turns that will inevitably lose you the game. In Villagers, it's fine. Don't worry if you had to make a hard decision because the game's so quick and it gives you so many different alternative options that you'll forget about it in no time. I think that's why Villagers is so enjoyable. It's difficult to find something that straddles that gap between a competitive design with plenty of depth to its ideas and a game that's still friendly and inviting to the player. It beckons you in with its colourful and minimalistic art style and provides you all the tools you need to have fun. The iconography is really smart as well. Although the cards can look difficult to read on your first pass, once you've completed a couple of rounds, you can tell what pretty much any card in the game does as soon as you draw it. There are a few notable exceptions. I thought this card here was giving me all my gold I earned this turn twice, plus another half on top of that, which is ridiculously powerful. It doesn't work like that at all. It's just 3 coins for every gold symbol on your cards. So make sure you read the detailed explanations of some of the cards in the rulebook if they look a bit dubious. All the characters have googly eyes though, so I mean, what more do you really want?
There's quite a few little additions to the box to make sure it scales with different player counts. As well, when you're setting up the road at the start of the game, you'll get more face-down cards per stack by increasing the player count. If that count goes above 4, you'll also get 2 new suits shuffled into your deck with their own production lines and art. And because there's still only 2 copies of each card in the deck, more players means more competition, and you'll have to be even more savvy to get those higher level cards on the table. Now, 2-player games have their own rules for the end of the drafting phase, and solo players will also be treated to a separate game mode in which they play against the Countess, a corrupt monarch trying to take back control of the land that you have built their village on. The solo variant comes with a whole new deck of cards to mess your building efforts up even more, and a fun little mix-up to the standard formula. Now, every time you draft a card, you also have to draft one for your opponent, and they get to instantly build theirs, ignoring all restrictions and not paying for any padlocks. Nasty. I found that, especially in a 2-player game, there was a fairly satisfying pace to it, where you left your game thinking, if I just had one more turn.
If we were to be picky about it and try to find faults, there is an awful lot of maths at the end of the game when you top up your scores. Especially if you had one of those slightly more tricky cards that gives you money for every, one of each thing that you have in your tableau, for example. The coins look a little cheap to me as well. You can get wooden ones as a paid extra that come in a nice little chest, but I'm not sure the design warrants extra spending on them. And as with all card games that deal with drawing cards and drafting, sometimes you can just get really bad luck. But all in all, it's hard not to recommend Villagers. It's easy to learn, it's pretty, it's cheap, and the theme carries really well, even if it's just a basic one. There's something really satisfying about building your own little medieval settlement and imagining the story of its expansion. Did you strip the land of its resources with mining and forestry efforts in exchange for big profits? Or did you foster a small little farming community with lots of luxury items for sale? Did you build tall or wide? Did you specialise or spread your bets? There's only one way to find out. Grab it for yourself and play a game.
Alright, so that was our review of Villagers.
Yeah, it's really good. Go and get it. It cost us like £25 and it looks really pretty on your shelf. I think it's a really nice little box.
It's good value as well for the amount of play you can get out of it. It's just very, very nice, isn't it?
I think it's one of those games as well where, I know it's a bit cliche to say, but players of all experience levels will get something out of it. And it's just above those sort of games where you're just getting into the hobby. It doesn't require too much understanding of you. So if you're new to board gaming, maybe you've played a few and you want something a little bit more bitey, like we said, this is a good one to get. And there is plenty of strategic depth for those who have played a lot of games as well.
I feel like I'm going to get a lot of sort of rinse and repeat value out of this. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, we've got plenty more for you to watch. Some of them should be on screen now, so do please give one of those a click. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. Please tell your friends, because we're trying to build a bigger audience and you can help us do it, and we'll be forever grateful. But most importantly, we want to say thank you very much for watching and have a lovely day.
Sorry, Margaret.